Hello, Guyana, and welcome to Facing the Nation. For joining me for another informative week. I am Malika Ramsey, happy to be in your homes this week. As of course, I invite you to sit back for the next hour or so, as we talk about. I'm going to extend it now to current issues and current affairs. And I did promise you last week that I would eventually open up back the phone lines because they've been somewhat closed for my last three programs or so. But today, I am definitely going to open up the program because there's a gentleman on with me who has a wide knowledge, especially when it comes to our economy. You know, we're living in times now where we're talking about this new oil exploration. There's a huge outcry about the so-called downward spiral of our economy. So I have an economist on today with me. There's talk about rice being in trouble, sugar being in trouble. So he's going to talk about a lot of things today, and you will be able to pose your questions that I may not would have thought about before. So stay tuned, and you'll get that chance to talk to Professor Dr. Clive Thomas, and I am really happy. Of course, this is not my first television conversation with him, but it's the first time that he has appeared or is appearing on Facing the Nation. Dr. Thomas, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to have you on Facing the Nation, sir.
Thank you, Malika.
All right. Dr. Thomas, as you would have known, was recently, just over a month or so,
Just
appointed. Under a month, yes. You see, I think his memory is better than mine. Just under a month or so, he has been appointed Presidential Advisor on Sustainable Development, Economic Matters, and of course, he heads the State Assets Recovery Unit. I know you want to know about the work of the State's Assets Recovery Unit because everybody's interested in what's happening with Guyana's assets. There have been many reports about things not going the way that they should have gone. So Dr. Thomas will talk to you about all of those things today, and we head straight into our conversation. Dr. Thomas, viewers, don't forget, stay tuned. I will be taking your calls a little later on for Dr. Thomas to answer your questions. He has wide knowledge on several current issues. I am not necessarily going to restrict you to only economic matters because he's such a learned gentleman, but I will ask you to be, a little tolerant of that and focus somewhat on the economic issues, but I know he can respond to some of your other questions in various sectors. Dr. Thomas, just under a month ago when you were when the public first learned that you were appointed a Presidential Advisor on Sustainable Development, you were quoted in one of our news dailies as saying that you are still elated, and you seemed very excited. Now that you've in a sense settled in and you probably would have already seen or experienced some of the challenges, are you still excited about this?
I'm even more excited.
Really?
Because the job is extremely challenging, and I like nothing more than a challenging job. I've been able to try to develop an assets recovery unit as part of my portfolio. And that is very significant because this is a growing trend worldwide. And we are lucky in Guyana that we have had a president who's committed to making this innovation. Because what we're trying to do is to not only recover assets that were stolen, but to try to put a regime in place, a system of governance, so this can never be repeated again by any government, which is what should be standard for all, I think, modern, decent, democratic societies. So the challenge is really immense. It is both recovery and prevention.
I am happy, even before we talk about the specific duties of this State Assets Recovery Unit, before we eventually go on to other matters, I am happy you used the word stolen in your response. Now, there are many of our citizens who are concerned that this new government, the APNU AFC government, would have already discovered dishonesty and downright criminal acts. We had cases of stolen vehicles being brought back. You recently had somebody having $27 million in their bank account because of a raise and a back pay they decided to give themselves. Now, and then you had the Alexi Ramatar e-governance and one laptop per family in the fiber optic cable program. Now, the citizens are concerned. Many have expressed the concern that why are these people just being sent on administrative leave and not being brought before the courts?
Well, that's a very good question to ask. Because, first of all, let me confess that what we're seeing manifest is only the tip of the iceberg. So people have to be well aware that what we're seeing is a level of predation that is covering everything that was possible for not only the principles of the government, the past government, but all the operatives of the state to take and use as their own property. They're doing that, the cars, the buildings, the machinery, the everything you could conceivably imagine, computers, what have you. People have been taking hold of them and treating them as if they belong to them. And therefore we have found ourselves deluged with that type of thing. But we also have a system in which there have been significant other levels of predation taking place. I'm talking here about large amounts of money, both through things like unvoicing of imports, illicit transfers of funds through the banking system, people entering into contracts with foreign companies and in possession of kickbacks. All types of things like that have been taking place.
And these are the things that the public is not yet aware of.
Because what has been happening, we are trying to work in that area, but by definition that area is an area where we have to work without a clear publicity. First of all, the institutions that we deal with require that we do not engage in any publicity. They want us to emphasize the role of the law. Transparency, that is, we report to whoever are our responsible officers. We let the public know about things that we're doing if they inquire. We're not doing secret operations, but we're trying to do it in a way that conforms to the rule of law and to make sure that judicial processes govern everything that we do.
In talking about operating in a way that confines itself to the law and so on, how much is this new unit, the SARU as I like to call it, the recovery unit, working along with our Constitution? Are there any clashes, implications? How does the Constitution provide for that?
Well, first of all, we're trying to work within the rules that exist. But secondly, and most importantly, we have to restructure some of the laws. And we are in a position where we are able to do that comfortably because the past government, whether they knew it or not, signed on to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. And that convention obligates us to pass certain legislation locally so as to make it compatible with the demands of that convention, just as we had to do with money laundering. So from that point of view, we are sitting on a situation where no one can reasonably object to the modernization of the laws. Because the old-fashioned laws that we had in the books about corruption is nothing compared to what the modern law requires. Like, for example, to prove theft under the old style system that we had, you had to prove that the person intended to steal, that they had what they call the mens rea. But under modern legislation, all that you have to establish is that the person is professionally trained, that they have the knowledge, and if they do not use the knowledge in the way that the law requires them to do it, then you presume they will engage in illegal or illicit activities. And that's the basis on which most times we're able to get after people. And if you go to the website of the World Bank, let's say their STAR initiative, you can see regularly how often cases are being adjudicated on in other jurisdictions, particularly in the United States, which seems to be a favorite for people to stash their assets, and in favor of the persons from whom the assets have been stolen.
Okay. And
there's a decision made at the last Addis Ababa conference that the president attended that states that countries are bound by the obligations of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption to repatriate stolen public assets to the country of origin and to facilitate and cooperate in all investigations in that regard. So, like, for example, just last week, there's a big settlement against a Filipino MP, we would call him, the equivalent of a member of parliament.
Member of Parliament, yeah.
Who was running a sort of project that was giving aid and succor to poor people.
Mm-hmm.
But she, in fact, and her family misused about $17 million of the project. And the courts in the United States ruled that although she's a U.S. citizen and living in the United States, while she was there, she's taking money that belonged to poor people of the Philippines, and that every asset that she possesses has to go to satisfy that debt. So we even took her car, her house, every single thing they possess.
In saying all of that, now specifically, I'm going to link this specifically to our case, the State's Asset Recovery Unit here in Guyana. Now, just to remind the people, the specific mandate for that, and I know the question really is, how long is the work in terms of recovering our asset? How long is that supposed to prolong, and can the unit really provide for all of that? Is it something ongoing?
It's something ongoing. It's something that would take time, something that is tedious. But we are at a position where we are on the cusp of getting international support from institutions. They asked us not to declare this.
Okay.
Institutions that are expert in these matters.
Mm-hmm.
The part of their policy is that it's a first come, first served basis. And we were lucky to get in our application in time. So they also don't want to come in on the back of publicity because they don't want to appear to be servicing
a government, a specific
political
government
agenda. Yeah. And they're here to protect the public at large. And that is what we're committed to. That's what I'm committed to. And therefore, I find that their intervention and their cooperation here will be extremely useful. They'll be training people as well.
In your work, in your work, do you plan at any point, at any stage, I mean, if it goes on the level where it becomes criminal or there are criminal matters that would have been unearthed, do you intend at any point in time, even before it gets to that stage, to call in any member or members of the PPP? Do you have that mandate to ask questions regarding your work?
We do. And I also recommend, without telling tales out of school, that in fact, whatever procedures that we're following right now should be procedures that are reinforced by the rule of law. For example, I don't think it's enough to forgive somebody if they stole a car and park it outside, let's say, the Pegasus Hotel, and tell you that please give me amnesty. I think that we have a bounden duty to lay at least a civil charge. We may, after the conviction, want to waive the conviction, but we should go through a legal process to make sure that people realize that what they've done is to break the law, and therefore to reinforce the concept that people who trespass in this particular way will face, no matter how long after, the arms of the law.
Finally, before we come off of the unit for now, sir, were you faced with a situation where you would have, because I mean this is a lot of work, where you would have had to, and again this is aside from the international assistance that you talked about, where you would have had to train personnel or probably get other outside, because there are not many Professor Thomases around, there are not many, at least the known ones, known economists around. Was it a struggle, or is it a struggle for you to get persons to work on the unit?
No, it's not been a struggle. And we have had a significant number of volunteers.
Okay.
In fact, we're about to take on a person, I hope, who is going to head our research division, who has got mighty experience in that particular regard. And he might be starting this morning.
Okay.
He would be reporting to my office while I'm here.
Okay.
So that's a significant process. We have to get persons in IT. That's the technology. And that is where we have to move to next. We have legal support within the division already. And we have an ongoing operation for the local matters that is structured along 3 lines. Recovery of vehicles, including motor cars and other equipment like things used in the mining sectors.
Okay.
Recovering land, which is also a big area of concern, because people have dissolved co-ops, and then you find the owners of the co-ops land is now the persons involved in the dissolution. So these are matters that we have to take into account. Then we have to go after buildings, because a lot of buildings are reported to us, which we are presently investigating how they constructed, whose finances were used for the construction. Does it have anything to do with the government? Are the people intending to sell these things? And we have to take legal steps to make sure the government's interest, the public's interest is protected during the sale. So we prepare to take out legal actions to halt proceedings until we are satisfied that no public resource has been misused in that way.
So in saying all of that, it is fair to conclude that the life of this unit could stretch way beyond 5 years, because this is a lot.
Of course. I am hoping that there's a permanent institution that remains in Guyana in perpetuity.
And after, of course, it would become, after recovering most of, if not all of our assets and so on, then it could become like a monitoring unit to monitor the
something
state.
to reinforce accountability in the country.
Okay.
What we want to do is to ensure that all the institutions that foster accountability, transparency, and that type of thing are strengthened. That's my expectation, and that's the concern I have, that we do not treat asset recovery as an isolated adventure or even project of the government that's integrated into even the civil society efforts to promote transparency and accountability, along with the reform of the justice sector, so that it's part and parcel of that grand effort to implement accountability in the country.
Okay, all right. Viewers, if you're now joining us, this is Facing the Nation. Today I am chatting with economist, well-known Guyanese economist, of course, achievements, and he's a learned individual in so many different areas. I did promise earlier that I will open up the phone lines a little later on in the program so that you can pose your questions not only on the state asset recovery unit, but all the other work that Dr. Thomas has been involved in, especially matters regarding our economy. Dr. Thomas, let's now talk a bit about the current state of the economy. Recently, we've had several persons, to some extent the private sector, and of course the opposition, the new opposition, they're saying that the economy is now on a downward spiral. Is that true? Is there any truth to that?
Well, I should make this observation first of all. The circumstances the economy finds itself in were sown over the last year and a half, the present circumstances. Although they have longer roots, like for example the deterioration in sugar, is not something recent, but over the past year and coming up to present, there has been a significant deterioration in the quality of the Gaisuko accounts. The company is effectively illiquid and effectively insolvent. If it were a private company, it would have closed its doors already. So, in effect, now we have to face that, which means that there's a threat towards the generation of foreign exchange, maintenance of jobs and livelihoods and that type of thing. Something that we did not plan, or we did not take part in producing this situation, but we have inherited it and we have to accept that. At the same time, that is happening also in rice, because the rice has been going through a period of relatively exceptional expansion. We've been expanding by at least 100,000 tons per year for the last 3-4 years, from about 2011, 2012. Now what we face with is a problem generated by the absence of markets for the rice, because in recent years, a lot of that rice was sold to Venezuela through the Petro-Caribe deal. But as you probably read in the press, the Petro-Caribe fund has been found to be exhausted. The Venezuelans, because of the border dispute, I suspect, is not willing to renew the obligations that they undertook when they first started the Petro-Caribe.
If I can just jump in here, there's been some talk about possibly getting a different market, rice market. How easy is that for Guyana at this point in time, especially where we have a government that's still more or less settling in? Are people trusting enough now to want to make such deals with us?
But the problem is not making the deals. The problem is at what price. Our difficulty is that the rice that we produce is relatively high cost compared to the rest of the world. So that we may not get the price that gives an adequate return to the farmers because their cost of production is relatively high. The productivity per acre or hectare is not as good as other rice producing regions around the world. We are a small marginal producer. We produce less than 1% of global output, so we are really a bit player on the global markets. From that point of view, we have to take the price that is given to us. We are a price taker. And from that point of view, we can find markets, but the question is at what price?
At what price? And will we benefit at very low
at very low prices? Like they may not make a positive return for the rice farmers involved. So we have to find a way out of this.
I was about to ask you.
Yeah, to give greater reliance on, let's say, the rice farmers and the millers cooperating to find their own markets and the government assisting. The government has taken on most of the marketing function. And over the years, the rice has expanded depending on where we can get markets. We were able to get markets through the private initiative, through what was called the other territories route to Europe, where we could use the dependencies of Aruba, Curaçao, the Turks and Caicos and those places to set up factories and to expand our exports to Europe through those territories, the overseas territories, that route, and countries. But that route has closed off because the Europeans no longer allow us to use it. And that led to the the export of rice in the early 80s. So now we're back again largely because of the Venezuelan market. So if we're not careful, that market being closed off to us could lead to another slump in the production of rice. So we have to find markets. And I think that the problem is one that has to be solved by giving the private sector, the private millers particularly, the responsibility of finding the markets.
Is this something, even because as we're on rice, you were telling me about a rice conference that's coming up on Monday, and I'm going to ask you about some of your proposals and so on. But what you just described, is that a situation that the private sector would they be open to that?
Well, I think that in this day and age, people are increasingly feeling that in matters of economics, the private sector shows much more drive because they're driven by the profit motive in finding and incentivizing production and innovation. So to that extent, I feel that we have to move towards the direction of giving those stakeholders in the industry great opportunities to help to solve the problem of the industry. They can't do it without government assistance, but we should not convert the government assistance into a dependency where they expect the government to do everything. We set the framework in which they operate, we set the regulatory conditions, we try as best as possible to prevent any exploitation, but we have to rely on private initiative for the most to make sure that production is competitive, that it meets the lowest cost that is possible, because people are seeking to make a profit out of it. But if we leave it only to public employees, that motivation, I think, will not be found. There may be a few people like me who might want to do things just for the public good, but that's not the generality of persons that you find around the world, or even in Guyana. Yeah. Okay. Most of them are motivated by what they can earn from the effort they put
benefits. Understood. Finally, before I open up the phone lines and begin to take some calls, because I know the viewers are waiting, let's talk about this rice conference that's coming up on Monday. Do you intend to make some proposals or presentations on the way? Because you have said a lot on the way forward when it comes to our rice industry.
I haven't actually prepared what I'm going to say. And I don't quite know how much time I have to speak.
Okay, so
I
you're
haven't
a
seen the program yet.
Okay.
Which is a bit, perhaps I shouldn't have said that, because the conference is on Monday morning. But I suspect I may be asked to speak for about 10, 15 minutes. And the topic that I've been given is Guyana's rice in a global context. So I'd have to situate it in the global context. But what I try to do is to identify a number of problems about that have been affecting our industry. Mm-hmm. And I've done a recent survey, which I, in fact, wrote about in the press a few weeks ago, trying to identify the factors which you find most mentioned in the press and the media, and from interviews with stakeholders, that people identify as the ones that are responsible for the expansion of rice, the explosive expansion of rice in recent years, and also the factors which are posing the greatest challenges, the most problematic factors in the industry. And I list the 12 leading ones in both categories. So we have a lot of things to talk about. Okay. And I hope that maybe through that people might benefit from the conference.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Viewers, we'll take a break from our conversation now, and the phone lines are now open. You can call us. I know you haven't done this in a while, so some of you may feel strange calling into Facing the Nation today. Of course, as usual, the telephone numbers are on your screen. Please be respectful. Try to be as brief as you possibly can. Of course, Dr. Thomas is here. He can take some of your questions. We're going to try to accommodate questions, specifically on the economy and other current issues and current affairs that has to do with our economy. Of course, we still haven't talked in depth about sugar, and then there is the issue of oil. So while we wait on your calls to come in today, let's talk about the possible benefits of this new oil find coming from an economist. We've heard the government side on it, but coming from one of our major economists. When should it be time for Guyanese to start getting excited about how we can benefit from this new oil exploration?
Before I do that, let me finish off the answer to the last question. Because while we were concentrating on the difficulties, I never gave a prognosis about going forward. But the prognosis which I wanted to give is very brief. Given that background, we face some difficult times. And we need to be able to manage it as we go forward, because there'll be more stresses on the economy than we initially anticipated, because this situation faces out now. It also is a situation where political mischief can play a large part. For example, if the opposition decides to ramp up protests within these areas and stimulate a decline in production. I'm not saying they were going to do that, but if they did, it'd make it even more difficult. We also face with the fact that the price of gold is falling. So we have to be able to marshal our resources in a way that we can meet the promises we make, but also keep the economy on a path of development that will be in the long run sustainable. That leads into of course, into the oil issue. Because if what is already being discussed anywhere close to reality, then it solves a lot of the problems for the country after the next 4 to 5 years. Because the oil is not going to be out of the ground anytime soon. But we have to put a mechanism in place to ensure that we benefit from it. The first and most important is, I think, that we should identify how we're going to ensure that the flows of foreign exchange, the flows of income coming out of the oil, can be stabilized so that it runs for a long time and is sustainable. We don't want to be like the traditional poker knocker, getting gains today, coming to down and spending it out tomorrow.
And then it's done.
And then it's done. So we have to ensure that we put in place mechanisms for stretching out that oil revenue for, let's say, decades ahead, so that we have a continuous stream of income. And in the meantime, the income that we get that we're not using immediately, we have to invest that wisely, so that in itself could generate further streams.
How would this new find contribute to further opening up the international, if you want to call it that, for want of a better term, international business sector?
A very, very great extent. As you know, all economies that have a significant oil sector, unless they're under geopolitical stress, which we cannot rule out for Guyana, are always among the leading economies. That is why when Trinidad is the leading economy in the region, the CARICOM region. And that is why Venezuela was so powerful before recent times when the oil price was booming, because the whole of the bulk of petroleum resources in the hemisphere. So we have to recognize that that is always the case. There are many spill-off opportunities. We have to protect ourselves, though. We have to make sure that these spill-off opportunities come to Guyana without trying to be unneighborly. There is also the risk that, given the find that it is offshore, we don't want Trinidad to end up being the sort of hub where you cluster the activities related to that find. We want to ensure that Guyana is the hub. So we have to protect ourselves to ensure that any access to the rigs and that type of thing comes through Guyana and not the most convenient port for the oil companies, which will be Trinidad, where they already have these facilities established. So planning for the oil is a major, major task. So that we have to begin to think of it. That is why my advisory function is sustainable development, because we have to think of development not as just growth or development in the short period. We have to be able to sustain it. And to do that, we have to have the institutions, the guarantees of the flow of income, the inclusiveness of that income use, so that we ensure that over time people can benefit immensely from these developments.
Okay. Over the years, of course, even way before this new administration, you've gone through several administrations actually. You have given advice on the economy. Some were taken, some weren't taken. Do you now feel, in a sense, vindicated, and now that you're in a different position whereby some of those things we can see them coming to reality?
Yeah. I think maybe that is why I said at the beginning, I'm excited. Because, as a professional, my greatest hope was to contribute to the development of Guyana, to be quite honest. But I've never been asked, you would not believe that. I was asked under one very contentious circumstance when the government was formed in 1992, but that did not materialize. And never again. So I've never again did anybody. So if anybody tells you they offered me anything to do or asked me to do anything in support of any government economic planning or anything like that, it's absolutely untrue. And this is really the first offer that was made to me. And I grasped it with both hands because I think I have some experiences that can be of benefit to the country without being conceited in stating that.
Okay. Again, viewers, you're still tuned to Facing the Nation. As I said before, our phone lines are open. I find it strange that no one wants to talk about
I'm intimidated.
economy. Yes, Dr. Thomas, his knowledge and his brilliance is apparently intimidating you today. But if you want to call, feel free to call. Of course, the regular rules stand. Turn the volumes of your television sets down. Be brief when you're coming through and be respectful. Dr. Thomas, now let's talk about the budget. We have not had a reading budget for 2015. Of course, political circumstances, general elections and all of that. And then even before that, you had the fact that the parliament was prorogued and so on. What can Guyanese really expect to benefit from a budget that is to come? I think it's in August or in September. From a relatively new government. And, the fact that there've been statements that our treasury is basically empty.
Well, I think that we have to expect that this budget will be a holding budget. It's not a budget really to carry us to the end of the year. Because we're so far into the year and the government is so recent that we cannot expect this to be a government that can plan for a full year forward. So that is the basic reality. So to my mind, the really most important budget, or the more important budget that we have to expect, is the one that comes in 2016.
And because people will want to know, there are some concerns. If we have a budget late 2015, what time can we expect to see a budget coming in 2016? Will it go back to the way we were accustomed to it at the beginning of 2016? Or will September become the date, whenever it is read, whether it be August or September, will that become the date for the presentation of a budget?
Well, I think that we have certain constitutional responsibilities because we limited the spending under the rules of the election and the change in the government. So we have to put in a temporary budget, I feel, for the 2015. And then we think of 2016 going forward. And that's going to be the important budget.
Okay.
I I think the Minister of Finance will probably know how to handle that. But I do know that I was approached because there's some concern about trying to meet the request and the obligation by a number of people and stakeholders to reform the tax system.
Okay, all right. Viewers, what we will try to do, I'm told that because I was wondering since when my viewers have gone shy. I know you've had a mouthful, you've heard so much. Well, it's up now. So you see, I'm told that we were having some. Apparently, we were having some trouble with the phones, so the phones are now up and ready to take your calls. So you can call me. Don't forget to turn the volumes of your television sets down. Be respectful. Be careful with the name calling. And Dr. Thomas is ready to take your questions. Caller, good day to you. Caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My wife's pregnant. Okay?
Yes.
But I want her to know if she has to go to Georgia Hospital or she could choose hospital of her own.
It is your right. It is her right to choose whether she wants to go to the public hospital or whether she wants to go to private.
Oh, because
that's a choice.
The government promised that she could go to any hospital, so they want her to know, you know.
Yeah, but okay, caller, thank you. I'll even ask Professor Thomas to comment on this too eventually. As far as I know, it's the right of anyone to choose where they want to seek medical
Yeah, but I think the
assistance.
problem is that, of course, if you go private, you have to pay.
Yes.
And the question of my driver will be trying to ask whether if they go private, the government will refund them.
Refund them. Oh.
But I think if the government has facilities, they will expect that those facilities will be used first, and only if you can prove that those facilities are not available, but they think of paying you for going to a private facility. That's the rule in every other country that I know of.
Okay. Caller, welcome to you.
First, I want to say thanks to the doctor for Clive Thomas there. The position he holds, I think, is a very good position. I see if it had been there with the experience and expertise. I want to say, may he continue to do what he's doing, and I know that he's going to get a good result from what he's doing, and I know he's a fair and he's an honest man, and that is what we want in our nation. So I want to say thanks to Dr. Clive Thomas for taking up that position to lead our country to the next level, and it will give us that sustainable economic growth that we are looking for. Amen. So I think he have an idea, not only an idea, he's well versed in what he's doing, and that is what we need in our nation. Thanks very much, Dr. Thomas, and may God bless you and give you long life to finish the work that you have started. It's your turn, and I know you're going to do a good job. Praise God for you.
Thank you very much for that, caller. Thank you. Viewers, I'm still getting some feedback. Please turn the volume of your television sets down. Caller, are you there? Okay, apparently we lost that one. Caller, good day to you. Caller?
Hello?
Caller,
Hello?
you're on the air, caller, but I'm sorry, I had to disconnect that caller. Callers, please turn the volumes of your television sets down. You can cause damage to our equipment in studio. Good day to you, caller.
Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Now, I would like to draw something to your attention.
Yes.
This government, Asian government, talking about clean and green government. Now, you have people who involved with millions of dollars in Region 4 RDC fraud. And presently, they are being reinstated. Can you shed some light on that?
Region 4 RDC fraud?
Yeah.
All right.
Millions of dollars.
Okay. All right, caller.
They are being reinstated back on the job.
Okay, caller. Dr. Thomas, and if I can piggyback too, I think this comes back to something you spoke about earlier, where people are talking about persons are being discovered to have done criminal acts when it comes to our state assets and monies and so on, and nothing is being done.
Well, I think he's also asking the question if we're going to be even-handed, that we're going to be treating those who are close to us in the same way as we're treating those that we are in competition with for running the government. And we intend to do that to be fair and even-handed. As I told you, the institutions that we work with are committed to fairness to protect the people of Guyana, not to protect any single group. And that's the condition in which they're helping us. And that's the condition under which I'm working. And that's the condition under which it's expected that the government would like to go, because it's a democratic government that is committed to transparency, committed to openness, committed to fair play, and committed to stopping the theft of public property. I think once these conditions are given, it is our task to investigate any complaint that is made to us. And that's what we try to do. So far, I might not have mentioned it to you in this program. A lot of our information has come through the public. The public has not been bashful in reporting to us many, many things. And so we have people going out there every day, taking photographs, checking the records of various things, trying to get the support of the other institutions, including the police, the GRA, and so on, to find out how authentic these things are. Because in a country like this, the main reliance is on the public. And the public is trying to help us, like the first caller that I have not responded to for saying those nice things. They are committed to trying to make this a new era of development in Guyana. And those types of persons are motivated to trying to find an end in justice wherever it might come from. And I think if we remain committed to that, I think it can only bring success to all of Guyana.
Okay. Caller, are you there?
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to ask Dr. Pearl concerning the finding of the state assets and the corruption of the ministers there, the previous ministers there. I want to know how long this is in Guyana.
Caller, are you there? Caller? Caller? All right, I trust her now. She was, if I can attempt to finish her question, she's asking how long the public would have to probably wait to see former ministers who are allegedly involved in this type of skullduggery. I'm thinking she was going to ask how long we have to wait to see them either behind bars or sanctioned or charged.
Well, I think it depends on how the evidence goes. I'd be very imprudent of me to say it 6 months, a year, 5 years, because we don't want them to go to court and say that I made a public announcement that I had to get people picked up within so many years, and that is why I'm doing it. So we have to be very careful that we don't lay the basis of a defense in anything we say or do publicly, which means that's why we have to get the legal protection that we need, and the leadership of the Assets Recovery Unit has to be prudent in every single thing that it says and does.
And it's strange because even as there are persons, there's one section of society calling for some of these people to be behind bars and sanctioned and charged and so on, but there's another section of society calling these things witch hunt. And even before you respond, Dr. Thomas, viewers, I think we are indeed, I do apologize, I think we are indeed having trouble with some trouble with our phone lines today, and it seems that's only one line that's functioning. I'm just going to let the operators know so they can check that. The line that's working is 225-0010. Yes, Dr. Thomas, let's talk about this split. Half are saying that government is already on a witch hunt, and another half are actually calling for government to do more so that we can see these people charged or sanctioned.
Yes, I recognize that there is that split, but I think that we have to be careful and not be rushed into any injudicious actions. I do not, that's my personal judgment, I do not feel that the government is witch hunting. I think they've been overly tolerant in some of the things. As I told you, if I were to make this ultimate decision, I would not let people who employ phantom employees go like that. I would insist that they subject some civil penalty where they are required to recompense the Treasury. I feel that this is not fair.
Okay, Dr. Thomas.
But at the same time, the persons who are anxious for the accusation that we are witch hunting, they may be taking cover and trying to protect themselves, because very often these people are culpable in some of these activities, and they try to defend themselves by saying you're witch hunting against me.
Okay. What I'm going to do, viewers, is try to take a short break. There is an event that the Minister of Social Protection, Mrs. Valda Lawrence, addressed recently. I'm going to take a short break because I really would like to at least take 4 or 5 more calls to hear where you stand and have our operators sort out the issue that we may be having with our phone lines at this time. So stay tuned and we'll come right back with you.
Today marks a significant event for the Ministry of Social Protection, but more particularly for girls and women of Guyana. We are about to witness the inauguration of a project which is targeted at empowering the lives of our girls and women. The Ministry of Social Protection has prioritized in its mission programs which advocate the advancement of girls and women, which aim to equip them with the requisite skills and expertise so that they can enhance their lives and those of their families. There is no doubt that our women folk need opportunities to build their self-esteem and confidence and have a sense of purpose of the contribution that they can make to their communities and to the country as a whole. The ministry's mission of restore, renew, rebuild presupposes its foresight and underscores its goal in providing them with the experience of achievement and enrichment to secure a better future for themselves. Sisters and brothers, this is the reason why I am so overjoyed today, because the focus is on action for the amelioration of the lives of girls and women so that they can realize their full potential. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome to Guyana and in our midst the team for the Be Good to People project, spearheaded by Ms. Susanna Nichols of Canada, Ms. Rosanna Beaumont of New York, and none other than Mr. Mark Proctor Jr. of Canada. These persons have envisioned a program that in the long term.
All right, we're sorry that we had to cut that presentation by Mrs. Lawrence. You just got a little piece of it. I promised to show it in its entirety, even though some of you would have already seen it on the various newscasts. It seems as though we have both our lines sorted out, so you can call for the remaining of the program. You can call either 225-0010 or 225-0008. Caller, are you on?
Yes, good afternoon.
Go ahead with your question,
yes,
please.
Dr. Tom. I'm Guyana National Congress. I'm an engineer by profession and also man. I realize what you're facing with. It's two things I did. One, Tuku can account for 134 probably billion and million mismanaged and more. The second is LBI Sugar State has been empty, where the investors come in for putting some money. That factory makes white sugar. No equipment is there. Now, under that Smithsonian document, those documents never went to Parliament, the opposition, never published for you to sell out every piece of equipment in there. They should be locked up. The security guard should face the line. The second thing, that the economy has been owned by the ransom by an underground tunnel, and Dr. Thomas should understand the underground economy which was running. And in Lombard Street, those big gunmen, that Mohammed that controlling that large sums of money and gold, he was buying gold for the gold board, and he was the agent for the central bank. Now, we can't run an economy with an underground economy, which our dollars print, mark, Bank of Guyana is holding. The last year that we can seize every bit of that money and put it back in the central because you can't hold our money. We have what we call a license. Bank Guyana has a license to print money and to do management operation in business at the central bank. And Dr. Thomas knew that. And there's another economy on the ground. This economy is holding billions of dollars. That is what caused the economy flop, because the money is not circulating, the US dollar is not circulating. He holds the gold. The gold is supposed to be in the central bank. Every operation must be in the central bank. You can't have another parallel on the ground economy. That is holding back the whole operation, why money is not circulating. The other thing, the housing department, I finance, got all that money banking water cylinder. And GPL money banking water cylinder with banking stuff. That is what's holding the economy. I was doing some...
Caller, I'm going to have to cut you short. You've been very lengthy. I'm going to ask Dr. Thomas to comment.
This thing is called for a team. A team to go out, and if you do some stats along the coast, those 4 areas, you will see what those people were eating, what they were earning. I was looking at Vision 9 on my computer there. Those people are just farming, no technician, nothing. And a country to move is for human per capital. There are no human per capital in proper skill.
All right, caller, I'm going to have to stop you there. Dr. Thomas, a lot said.
Quite a lot, but a lot of it is very important. The thing about Guyana is that we've had a very significant underground economy for nearly 2 decades now. The last study that I've seen, that I know that has been done, was done by a lecturer at the University of Guyana by the name of Pasha. He's a member of the PPP, so he can't be said to be biased against criticisms of the government. But he found the underground economy was equivalent to 31% of the official economy for the period 2001 to 2009. So we kept that figure, or even approximated it and called it 25%. It means a quarter of our GDP of over $3 billion is being circulated and among people and among institutions, among firms that are not recognized by the official tax authorities of this country.
Okay.
That's a significant amount of money. Some people find it unbelievable to expect that, because that amount of money is sitting there. It's not really sitting there, but it's being used there without any attempt to pay taxes on it, without any attempt to pass it on through legitimate business in Guyana. So that's a complete loss to the economy. And that is one of the reasons why we find that when the IMF and the World Bank do studies of illicit flows out of Guyana, that they have found that on average between 2010 and 2012, $423 million. That's nearly $80 billion Guyana dollars on average each year for the 2 or 3 years, moving through the banking system and through the trading system without paying any taxes, without being of any benefit to the Guyanese. Because when the money passes through there, it goes into the hands of those who own it, and they don't keep it abroad to bring it back here. They keep it abroad to benefit from consuming it abroad or using it in businesses abroad. So the underground economy is a very significant part of the problems that we have to deal with, and we have to take steps to try to dry that up. And that is why I say that the international cooperation in the area of trade and the conventions against corruption represent, I think, the best means for us to do that, because we can't solve that problem on our own. I may be underestimating the capacity of the Guyanese regulatory and
this
police
is the convention
authorities.
we've signed on to.
Yes, we signed on to. The PPP signed on to in 2005. God bless them, because they gave us a very important weapon.
A good start.
Yeah.
Caller, are you there? Caller, are you still there?
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air, caller.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Do you have a question or a comment? Caller? All right, we can't waste time. We only have about 5 more minutes left in our program. Caller, welcome. Are you there?
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm calling concerned. The caller called a few calls before about reinstating somebody at the Region 4 RDC.
RDC, yes.
Yeah, that is true about the corruption. It was between 2009 2010, and I heard the guy get back his job. He will be on job on Monday. And we vote coalition because we were hoping to get corruption out of this country.
Okay.
So I just hope that somebody look into it.
Thank you very much, caller.
Okay.
A serious issue indeed, Dr. Thomas. Because
But I encourage the caller to report it. I mean, we try to be even-handed. We don't have a political bias. Let her report it if she feels
because at this time,
we'll have it investigated.
Right? I know you would commit to that. You are committed to that. But at this point in time, let's say the person has been found culpable of corruption or whatever they would have. What if criminal acts they would have been involved with in the past? Can you now remove them from that post since they've just?
Well, we don't know. We have to verify it.
Okay.
An allegation is not a conviction. So we will investigate.
Okay.
I think that's a cautious and careful thing to say.
Caller, stay online, please.
President, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon to you.
I want to know what's really going on. We have an investigation government now, or we just have a government that just investigating all these things? We need to govern the country.
So you're saying that we should not investigate skullduggery committed in the past?
That don't look back for these things, but first you got to do is govern the country, and all of these things will come later.
But they are governing the country. You see, the thing is, caller, even before Dr. Thomas comments, you are going to tell me now on the phone that we have a government that seems to be investigating and not governing, but then there's another half of the population that's going to say the government is not investigating enough. So tell me, how do we go forward with that? And the government cannot take the reins of this country and not investigate supposed skullduggery that occurred in the past.
I think you should remind them.
It's not an investigating government. This is a government put in place there by parties.
These are not two exclusive activities.
We're talking about investigating this by anybody. We want to see the economy moving. We want to see people coming to this country. We own Guyanese now not going to stop coming to this country because
the government is
being put in place. 2 o'clock you got to close off. You got to go and sleep. People who put in these things in places who don't party.
Caller, I really thank you for your contribution. Dr. Thomas, I know you will explain this, but I don't think it's a case where the government can pause governing a country to investigate. I am thinking that that they can be done at the same time. That is the reason government created a state asset recovery unit. Dr. Thomas.
Yeah, of course, because we have to do both. We have to remember the scale of the estimated public theft. We're talking here about 300 billion Guyana dollars in 1 year. That's nearly 30% of our GDP. We can't afford to give away resources like that and not try to recover it. Even if we recover 10%, that's a substantial
amount. It can contribute to our new economy.
All the things we want to do.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Let me take this opportunity to apologize to our viewers for the little technical difficulties we've had. Of course, you know, this is not how things go on Facing the Nation Weekly, but it's life, and these things do happen. As you can see, you're even hearing the phone ring off air, and that does not usually happen. I'd also like to take this time to thank Dr. Thomas for coming. You did say a lot. I am really sorry that the public didn't get an opportunity to get some more out of you, but as the work of the unit that you're running continues, and as you continue to contribute in many other sectors, we will try to get another opportunity to bring you back to talk to the public.
I'll be only 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thomas. Viewers, thanks for tuning in. I do invite you to tune in again next week for another edition of Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey, urging you to be good Guyanese citizens, take care of yourselves, and take care of each other. Goodbye.